In a world addicted to hustle and grind, we were taught that happiness means smiling through the pain and chasing success at all costs. But what if? What if that script was broken? Today's guest, Craig White, he had everything most people dream of. A career at the highest level of professional rugby. And yet he walked away. His journey then took him into silence, through yoga ashrams and deep into jungles, searching for something the world had forgotten. And what he discovered? It wasn't weakness or escape. It was stillness. A hidden strength that unlocked clarity, confidence, and a new definition of success. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Bare Essentials Podcast.
You'll never know unless you try. The limits way up in the sky. Don't let it all go passing by. You know you only get one life.
Socrates said, "To move the world, we must first move ourselves." Those words feel like the heartbeat of today's episode. My guest, Craig White, has spent decades helping athletes, coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders redefine what performance and success really mean. Craig's path has taken him from rugby pitches to yoga ashrams in India and even deep into South American jungles. But what he's discovered along the way is this: performance isn't just about pushing harder. It's about stepping into clarity, forgiveness, and true leadership. Today, we'll talk about how to break through mental blocks, sustain energy without burning out, and maybe most importantly, uncover a vision of success that's truly your own. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Craig White to the show. Craig, how you doing? Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Charles, it's good to meet you, mate. A quick message on LinkedIn, and it felt right. And I like your energy, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, same here. I thought the same thing when I seen what you were doing, your background, and the work you're currently doing. I thought it would. I try to gauge it by if it resonates with me. I'm hoping at least that it's going to resonate with everybody else. So I know it will definitely resonate with me, Craig. So really cool. So for those who are tuning in, don't know who you are, would you mind doing a brief intro?
Yeah, I'm a men's leadership coach. I'm an author. I will be an author. I'm just about to publish my first book, which is along the lines of the redefinition of male leadership in today's world. And I've been known as a high performance coach for the last 30 years as well. I have my 30-year professional coaching career is kind of split in two halves. The first half, I worked at the elite level of professional rugby union as a performance coach, and for the last 15 years, I've been consulting in professional rugby, but carving out a different identity and really moving into the sphere of male leadership and how to redefine that. So I help men in the middle age, relatively successful men financially. I help them to kind of enter the next phase of their life and turn the gaze inward and really kind of change and redefine what it means to be a successful man.
Yeah, love it. I think a lot of the audience that tunes in for this, I think that's probably the sweet spot as far as the demographic. So that is why I was very interested on having you on. A lot you said there that I definitely was making mental notes that I want to go back on. I thought we would start here though. As I was looking to prepare for the podcast, I think I saw where you're describing your quest. It's taking you across the world in search of meaning. What was the turning point that shifted your focus from athletic performance to deeper personal
Yeah.
growth?
The turning point really was it was about 15, 16 years ago. I was working as head of performance for the Wales rugby team, living in Wales. Life was good. Um, and my wife at the time, Marta, she was into yoga. I wasn't really into yoga, and she really wanted me to go on a yoga retreat with her. And she said, "You can choose it, Craig. So because I used to be really quite hardcore. If I'm doing something, I'll do it properly. So I kind of went online and I found this 1 month intensive yoga retreat in Thailand, um, at a tantric yoga school. So we went on this yoga retreat, and it just changed my life. It changed my life in a million ways. It turned me upside down. It was blissful. It was painful. It touched parts of me that I'd never felt since childhood. Playfulness, joy, happiness, euphoria, but darkness, anger, rage, sadness, and retrospectively looking back on that month of my life, I'd just been a dynamo all my life. I'd been a Mr. Workaholic. I'd never stopped. The first couple of weeks of the retreat, I couldn't keep still. I was itching. I couldn't sit in meditation. I'd go out for a piss. I'd come and but then something clicked on day three, and when I was able to keep my body still, and when I was able to regulate my nervous system, that's when kind of the magic started to happen. And I left that retreat and it was like, wow, there's so much more to life that I haven't even scraped the surface of yet. And I really, really need to go on to a quest to find out, like, what are these rules that I've downloaded from life, and which ones serve me and which ones don't serve me? How can I create my own new identity? How can I create my own set of rules? Um, so it took me on a journey of self-discovery. I went back to my job in Wales. My values had shifted in a month. Nothing made sense to me. I didn't know why I was there. But it took me a while to leave that job because of the story of, you should be doing this, you deserve this, it's prestigious, you earn good money. But my heart was saying something different. And in the end, me and my wife, we left Wales and we went to live in Thailand to study yoga more in depth. And then that was the start of really kind of the deep dive into self.
I like the way you put that. Downloaded the rules of life. That's a. I think I'm gonna. You'll probably see me say that somewhere along the way now, and you'll say, "Oh, I said that to Charles on the podcast." uh, Craig, you did mention stillness too. I wanted to ask you about that because I think a lot of men, especially, yeah, I know I deal with this all the time. When we think about stillness, that word, honestly, what does it really mean?
Yeah. Um, I can only relate to my own experience, but also to my clients' experience. It's like most of the clients I work with, in the beginning, it's difficult to be able to, for them to be able to give themselves enough space to experience the medicine of stillness, because they've just equated work, doing productivity with, that's what men do. They provide, they get shit done, they keep going, fill the blanks, fill the spaces. So one of the first things I do with my clients is to kind of really create little pockets, little windows throughout the day of stillness. Um, and with my journey, when I it took me a while because I was so dysregulated. My nervous system was so dysregulated. And when we have a dysregulated nervous system, we're always on the go. We're always perceiving threat. We don't want to stop. It's dangerous to stop. But after a while, when I really kind of started to dive in and I really felt aspects of myself that had so much wisdom that came up from the space of stillness, I had no choice then. I had no choice but to go and seek it out. And now I'm at a stage in my life where it's just one of the medicines that I digest on a daily basis, because I can close my eyes or I can create stillness, and whether that's walking, having a cup of tea, and it just really is a beautiful place to be. But it never used to be. It used to be unsafe. I couldn't stop as a kid. People used to call me Mr. Dynamo. My mum wouldn't let me stop. She was always wanted me. She equated doing with being a successful man. So it's a real journey. And the other thing to say, Charles, is if a man has a dysregulated nervous system, and what I mean by that is he's kind of in subtle fight or flight,
Mm.
he's in survival. He's learned to be that way. Sometimes when I take them into stillness, in the beginning, it can be a little bit scary. It's like, whoa, what just happened then? Whoa. But with practice, and it's really one of the jewels of the work I do with men when I look at them a few months later, a year later, and how much stillness they now carve out in their life when they can feel the benefits of that within the body. So it's a medicine for me.
Last thing about stillness, I'll ask you because again, I can't wait to listen to this back because you said a lot of really interesting things there. You mentioned it, the medicine of stillness. For a lot of people listening, Craig, I won't lie to you. For me, I think of stillness, and I'm working on it. This is my quest that I'm currently in. I'm working on stillness, but to me, stillness is really loud still.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the medicine of stillness. What are some of the benefits? What is the benefit of stillness, the medicine of stillness?
Um, I mean, the first thing I wanted to say to that, to respond to that question is, I mean, there's lots of ways to be still, you know, because sometimes it looks like we're still, but there's chaos inside. So accessing the doorway to deeper states of stillness, and I will come on to your question in a moment, but accessing the doorway, there's so many different doors. For some people, it could be, right, I'm going to take 5 minutes of stillness and I'm just going to listen to some beautiful piano music. For other guys, it might be, right, I'm just going to take 5 minutes of stillness and I'm just going to sit with my dog.
Mm,
Or I'm just going to take some stillness. I'm going to leave my phone at home and I'm just going to walk with my dog and I'm just going to listen to the birds. For other guys, stillness could come through movement. Sometimes when we do things like yoga or some kind of Tai
mm,
Chi or something like that, it's also a doorway into the stillness. Really, the body doesn't have to be still for us to experience inner stillness. The inner stillness is really it's a perceptive state. I could be doing this, but inside I'm unbelievably still
mm,
because that's where my attention is. It's really important to speak about attention here in relation to stillness because um, accessing stillness, it's just a practice of attention. Our attention is just conditioned to be out there in narratives, in drama, in story, and it's noisy and it's busy and it's up and down, it's chaotic. There's addiction to chaos. So really, it's bringing the attention back to stillness, bringing
mm,
the attention back to the breath, bringing the attention back to the posture, bringing the attention back to the sound of nature, bringing the attention back to a space where we can learn to witness life instead of being the actor in the movie. So we can't really talk about stillness without talking about attention and the practice of reclaiming our attention and bringing it back into, let's say, our center, the center of stillness is is actually the essential practice, whether we're moving or whether we're still. Um, but the first kind of benefit is related to the nervous system. We have a nervous system that's burnt out.
mm,
It's only by learning to regulate it and bring it back and bring it back and bring it back that it can once again find its natural resilient state. And when we have a more regulated nervous system, every other physiological system responds in a harmonious way. Um, when we're still, we're more in alignment between the brain and our heart. We're in a more coherent state between the brain and the heart activity. Um, calmness, peace. Um, the more regulated we are, the more we're able to make correct decisions instead of making decisions from our survival center, which is the reptile, the on off. The more we are regulated and having inner stillness, the more, especially as men, and I don't mean to be sexist this way, but I am going to mention women, the more capacity we have to hold space for the feminine. We have the capacity to whole space for women without trying to fix them. We have the capacity to regulate our nervous system so that we stay calm in the storm of relationships. So there's so many benefits to really kind of opening the doorway again to stillness. The other thing to mention from my life, and I think this relates to a lot of men, is growing up, my dynamism, the fastness, Mr. Capable, that was rewarded and I received love for that. So growing up, the other side of me, slowness, methodical, still, quiet, that was relegated to my basement, to my shadow.
Mm.
It's only when I've got older that I've had enough insight to say, fuck that. This is a beautiful part of me that I want to reclaim again. So my healing journey has actually been a journey of reclamation. I've not learned anything new. I've just reclaimed parts of myself that I relegated to the shadow growing up. So now I can be Mr. Dynamo if I need to be Mr. Dynamo, and I can be Mr. Slow, thoughtful, sensitive, considerate. So I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I feel a lot more whole now than when I was a kid. And as a leader, I actually have more range. I talk about range a lot in leadership circles. As a leader, it's not, well, this is me, take it or leave it. I have range. I
Mm.
can be slow, I can be fast, I can be stoic, I can be playful. And I think that's an important quality as a leader that isn't spoke about a lot. And it's definitely not written in the old leadership books.
Well, I can say this. I think for me, I think doing this podcast is where I feel the most still to for me. I feel like
Yeah.
it keeps me the most focused and still and listening and just active listening. And um again, I can't wait to listen to that section back because you said a lot there that I personally want to unpack. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. You started to get into leadership, and I want to get to that. Before we go there, though, I wanted to ask you this because I think this is part of growing into leadership. Um, when we talk about our own performance, I think you said about, or I read something where you really can't improve performance until you define what success means. So, how do you guide people to uncover their definition of success?
Um, that's a great question. That's a really, really good question. There's various layers to this, and it does also depend on the person as well. Um, just wearing, I guess, more of an, I guess I could say, esoteric spiritual hat for the time being. So one of my key definitions of success in my own life right now is how much joy I feel in my body on a daily basis. It's as simple as that.
Mm.
And if I can't close my eyes and access joy and gratitude and acceptance and contentment, there's something I need to act on something, because I'm not successful. So that's, I guess, me with a kind of more abstract mindset. Um, for some people with a spiritual kind of slant on life, maybe the definition of success that they have is they feel connected to the source, whether we want to call it a quantum field or I don't whatever we call it. So it depends on the client, but I think from a practical perspective, it's really important. So I have to get really, really clear on the drivers of my client's life
Mm.
because if a lot of men are perfectionists, right? They come to me and this, I want to be disciplined in the gym. I want to be disciplined at home. I want to be disciplined with my kids. I want to be disciplined in my work. I want to go to bed early, and it's a kind of it's a self-defeating pursuit, really, to be perfect in every and successful in every domain of life. So one of my old mentors is a guy called John D. Martini, and he talks a lot about human values, human drivers, and how they are shaped. So I identify with men what drives them, and with most of my clients, the drivers tend to come in the order of um, the business that they run, which supports the family that they inhabit, and underneath that, there tend to be health and wellness, and the fourth one tends to be kind of friendship, kind of social life. Okay,
Mm.
there's subtle differences, and not everybody's drivers are exactly the same, but they tend to be work life, family life, health and wellness, and friends, and maybe kind of self-development. Those five rocks tend to be the makeup of most of my clients. So it makes sense to define success in those areas,
Mm.
especially the top two. If a guy is successful within his business and is successful within his family, he's living a pretty awesome life. But even the definition of success for some of my clients changes within those domains. A definition of success for my clients and myself in relationships, in intimate relationships, whether that's a lover or your kids or whatever, is things like more present, greater capacity to listen, greater capacity to be calm in the storm when
Mm.
the wives or partners are kind of really in the feminine, greater capacity to take things less personal. So all those kind of soft, sensitive, I guess, regulation focused benefits are a definition of success. They never used to be. And as men, we haven't been taught for thousands of years to do any of that. That's what I call relational presence.
Mm.
We've only known how to provide and protect and how to get shit done and how to receive validation through, oh, look, I've done that for you and I've done that for you. I'm a good boy. It's
Mm.
this relational sphere that's we're being drawn into more than ever before. And so I help my clients with that, and that is a definition of success. I have a 20 question, I'll share it with you actually. I have a 20 question inventory that I use with my clients to assess how, I use the word safe, but you could say successful, how safe slash successful they are within their intimate relationships. And it's a checklist. I can't remember what they all are, but there's things like, I listen with presence. I'm not on my phone when I'm with my kids. I stay regulated when she's making a request or judging me. I never criticize or belittle her, and so on. And that's a beautiful way to define success. Um, and in the vocational space, a lot of my clients that they really care about the staff and their employees, that they really care about influencing them and wanting them to also feel the ripples of their own development in their own families. So, but to summarize your question, for me, the key juice of success has to be in the relational space, a relationship to ourselves, a relationship to our loved ones, and a relationship to spirit, however you want to define spirit. That has to be the definition of success for me in today's world. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going and going and be unhappy and seek more, chop more trees down, pollute the earth, have more fights, because
Mm.
we're looking for happiness outside of this domain of relationship, which is where all our stuff comes up.
Mm. Interesting you said that because as you were touching on that, well, you mentioned about gratitude and joy, but then you said about happiness. Do you ever experience or think that sometimes, Craig, that it's the fact that we we don't really know what makes us happy?
Yeah.
Like do you think that? Because I'll be honest with you, I think that if I sat here today, honestly, for me, I think I can name things. I could go down a list that I think it makes me happy in the moment, makes me happy in the moment. This does, that does. But do you have those deep conversations with your clients about really focusing to identify truly what makes them happy? Because I do think we're missing out on the aspect of gratitude and joy. And as I get older, I think
Mm.
I'm starting to put more emphasis on that. But do you think that's an issue with a lot of the men you deal with?
I mean, words let us down, really, don't they? Language lets us down at times, and I don't. Maybe I used it today, but I tend not to use that word happiness in my vocabulary because you and I downloaded a script from life that happiness is, you're smiling all the time and you're feeling bliss and gratitude, and whenever you're feeling anger, sadness, guilt, hurt, and shame, you can't be happy. So we've got this faulty download of what happiness is. Um, I remember there was a quote by a famous psychologist. I can't remember his name. He's in his 90s now. Oh, I wish I could remember it. I can't remember it. His first name is Robert, and he says the word happiness comes from um, the word happen. So for him, happiness is coming to a state where we are perfectly okay and content with what is happening.
Hmm.
But I've sidetracked myself though, really. So I don't really use it. I tend to base my judgment of my life around gratitude.
Hmm.
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for everything, everything. Um, what brings me, and there's also two other questions. What brings me joy? The other question is, what brings me closer to spirit?
Hmm.
Nature, walking in the forest, swimming in the waterfall, sitting on a bench watching the river go by, the smells of nature, listening to the sounds of the birds. I don't have a TV. I've not had a TV for 20 years.
Hmm.
It's no wonder people are not content and not joyful in their lives because they spend most of the day looking for dopamine hits. Instagram, TV, Netflix, a movie, another movie, another movie, another movie, and it never hits the spot. So for me, we can't talk about happiness, success, or gratitude without talking about nature. We're so disconnected from nature. It's just a catastrophe for the human species.
Well, that yeah, again, and I can tell we talked a little bit when we first got on here. I love your place there, and I can tell it screams nature and being connected with nature. So that's I can see why you said what you said. And I mean, I think it's true, Craig. I mean, I know now one of the things, my wife and I try to do every weekend now, we have a state park near us. We try to get there to walk through
Right.
the
Yeah.
paths to walk by the river. So no, I totally get it. I definitely want to touch on leadership. That's a big thing here on the podcast. So uh how do you define true leadership, and why do you believe it can't be separated from personal growth?
Um, well, I mean, just on a practical note, the reason I use the word leadership is because um, I want to attract men to the work that I do. When I came out of my full-time rugby journey, I actually practiced men's work for a while. I was in that men's work space. But based on my journey in professional sport and the perception that people might have from me, I found it a lot easier to fill my programs when it was under the realm of leadership. Because under the realm of men's work, you're a man, you've got a problem, maybe you're suicidal, or you've got an addiction, or you're depressed, or you've got some problems and you're feeling shit. I found that it was easier for men to come through the door of, look, I know I can be a better leader. I know I can be a better husband. I know I can be a better dad. But they didn't want to come through the door of, depression, problems. I've got shame. I don't feel good enough. So I just changed my branding and I got them through the door of leadership. I'm still doing the same stuff when they come to me, but it's through the door of leadership because every man wants to be a leader. And actually, um, how do I define leadership? The first I mean, there's a million ways to define leadership, you know. In terms of the components of leadership, for me, the first one has to be um, self-understanding. We have to understand ourselves before we can lead ourselves. The second one, which nobody speaks about, we have to have a healthy nervous system. It's a huge aspect of leadership which nobody talks about. The third part is we have to know how to harness our energy and how to not waste our energy. There's a lot in that, from the way we live and our health and our food and our sleep and where we live in nature, but also how we harness our sexual energy instead of wasting our sexual energy. So energy is a big part of leadership. Emotional mastery, learning to feel again, is a big part of leadership. Um, Radical accountability is a big part of leadership. Structure and direction is a big part of leadership, as is flow, the masculine structure, direction, and flow, which is more of the feminine. So there's a lot of pillars within that leadership, but everybody can lead.
Hmm.
Everybody is a leader. Everybody in the planet is a leader, because the way you express yourself and the way I express myself is different. But in certain contexts, you have strengths and you have blind spots. And in certain contexts, I have strengths and I have blind spots. So a big component of leadership for me is learning what your natural talents are and learning what your natural strengths are. And I use the Gallup Strengths Assessment. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Mm-mm.
It's the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's a US thing, and that helps to determine, where you have your natural talents and where your natural strengths are, and what domains you should be leading in. For example, some men are really, really talented thinkers, right? Of course, there's a blind spot, and the blind spot of thinking too much is overthinking. But some men are really talented thinkers. They can think about the past and bring wisdom. They can see the future. They love to learn and bring new ideas. They can brainstorm. They can project a vision. They can create a process and measurements and metrics, and really kind of use the analytical, strategic parts of the brain to lead. We need leaders like that in the world,
Mm.
even in the family, it's useful sometimes. There are other men who have real kind of what I call traditional leadership traits. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the leaders in the 50s, they have presence, they have charisma, they have penetration, they can win people over. They're great communicators. That they exude confidence. They want to leave a real significant mark. They have urgency. So they would be like the leaders from a influential perspective. There's also men, and I'm seeing more of these today, which is great. Some of my clients have blown me away at how brilliant they are with people. They go. One of my clients is a head coach with a famous rugby team here in the UK, and he's just a people master. He goes into the workplace and he doesn't care about the laptop. He's not interested in statistics so much. He's just got a talent for intuiting people, connecting with people, harmonizing people, being adaptable to the needs of people, leaning into conflict resolution, treating each person like an individual. So some of us lead through that domain. It's
Mm.
important to realize that, because I see a lot of people, if they don't show the traits of the influencer, they think they're not a leader, even though they're this kind of artist that can really make people feel safe. And the other area of leadership that is spoken about within this model that I talked to you about, the Clifton Strengths, is execution. People that are just good at getting shit done. They
Hmm.
don't want to be in meetings, but they get shit done. They're driven, they're organized, they're problem solvers. They like to solve problems. They want responsibility, their integrity, they keep their word, and they do what they say they would do. So those are kind of executors. So if we look at those four domains, we're all leaders, really. You
Mm.
know, even the mother at home with four kids, wow, she's combining all of those domains to be a brilliant leader. So we're all leaders. We've just got to find our unique way of leading, which is probably the icing on a cake, really, in relation to the work that I do. I help men to find the uniqueness as leaders and how to express that. And I also help them to realize the stuff that they're not talented at, or they're not good at, or the stuff that drains them, frustrates them. I also help them to delegate that out or forget about it.
Craig, do you think, as you were talking there, I was thinking about this, do you think that potentially as a society, we may have kind of limited people's perception on their ability to lead because we've carved out and defined such a specific perception of leadership?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. You know, the powers that be have created this hierarchical kind of conquer divide. I win, you lose, or I really win and you can have a little bit. You know, of course. And that's why people grew up being brainwashed for years and years and years that we need to be led by someone else. Now, what happens on a deep subconscious level is whenever you project greatness on someone else, you actually project less than on yourself. So the majority, I would say, of society walk around projecting greatness onto other people instead of recognizing that own greatness in themselves. You know, self-leadership is the most important part of leadership. We have to lead ourselves before we can lead others. We have to be kind to ourselves before we can be kind to others. We have to accept all parts of ourselves in order for us to access all parts of other people. So it starts with self.
Mm.
You know, all the leadership books are about strategies and ways to talk and ways to speak, and they're all important. But the new books about leadership have to be about self, leading self, self awareness, radical accountability, emotional mastery, nervous system regulation, presence, building awareness. It has to start with self. You
Yeah, I
know,
love the way you said that. And I know in my own profession and what I do for a living, I think some of that is definitely valuable because I think it's a lot about now is what I see is trying to give people confidence to lead themselves. That's,
yeah,
I think, on a daily basis, what I'm hoping to accomplish. If I can give somebody just that confidence and the ability to go, you know what, I can do this. I feel like I did a good job that day, you know? So that's kind of where I'm
yeah,
leading myself to now.
yeah.
Um, Craig, as I was preparing for this, I saw something that I thought was really interesting, and correct me if I get this wrong, but I think I saw where you said something about forgiveness isn't usually associated with performance. Uh, why do you believe forgiveness is so essential for people to thrive?
Um, I'd like to define what I mean by forgiveness, though, or my definition of forgiveness. You know, again, we've been conditioned to believe that forgiveness is forgiving someone else for what they did. But what I realize now about forgiveness is, so I'll give you an example. I have a client, he was a client of mine. Um, he finds it incredibly difficult. In fact, this is what I'm saying now is incredibly common with a lot of men. He finds it incredibly difficult to forgive his mother for what she did or what she didn't do or what she said or what she didn't say to him throughout all of his life, right? And this particular client on a retreat with me, he actually had a moment where he cried And he said, I forgive my mother. But he's still struggling a little bit. And I'll tell you why. Ultimately, those men have to forgive themselves. Because between the years of 0 and 7, your mother, your father, the people that take care of you are gods. They can't do anything wrong. If they shout at you, it's not their fault, it's your fault. If they hit you, it's not their fault, it's your fault. If they say you're stupid, you believe that, right? So, and that's 7 years of our life where if our needs have not really been met, we blame ourselves. So ultimately, we can forgive our brother, we can forgive our mom, we can have a forgiveness list. It doesn't matter. We have to forgive the person, the young part of ourselves. And that is a really, really deep, sensitive, spiritual, really, really sacred journey. And it's not here, it's here. And when that starts to happen, a liberation takes place. Because the more we forgive ourselves, we can then learn to be kind to ourselves and be loving to ourselves. And the more kind and loving and accepting and generous we are with ourselves, the more that's reflected back to us in the outside world. The more we hate ourselves on the inside, we sabotage ourselves, we don't give ourselves space, we're too hard on ourselves, we whip ourselves, we're violent with ourselves, it's reflected back to us. So self-forgiveness is the most important pursuit for any man
Hmm.
and any woman.
Yeah, that's some powerful stuff there. As you were saying that I was visualizing that person having that moment. I could see why that would be so so emotional for someone, but it makes sense what you're saying. And I never honestly, I don't think I ever looked at it that way. I know when I was, you know, getting ready for this, that part, I was kind of like, I wonder what he means by that. So no,
Yeah.
thank you for
A,
that.
bi- a big a big part of the work that I do with my clients is teaching them to talk to themselves the way that their higher self would talk to them.
Mm,
So I have a clients, right, some of them right now. Every single morning they leave me a voice note, and the voice note is the higher self talking to them that day. So it could be, hey Peter, I'm just checking in with you, mate. I want you to know that I love you today, and I also want to remind you that you've got a really important meeting. Be kind, be bright, have some fun. When you go home, switch your phone off. Da, da, da. It's an absolute game changer. If we
mm.
plant that seed in the morning when we wake up and we have a conversation with ourselves, it's such a beautiful practice to rewire our nervous system to believe that we are lovable, we are worthy, and we do mean something and we can lead ourselves. It's so critically important. Sometimes guys speak it, sometimes guys write a letter. I've written love letters to myself, I've written poems to myself. Sometimes it might just be a few bullet points, but it comes from a place of kindness
Mm.
because we're not kind to ourselves. Most men are not kind to themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I That's really an interesting practice to me. So I guess I would ask you this based on that. How do you get the person to find their higher self first? I think that to me would be the biggest issue is I
Well,
think
yeah, it's a good question, Charles, and it doesn't have to be a higher self. There's lots of ways to do it. So I might say to you, Charles, I want you to project yourself into the future to your 80-year-old self, and I want you to imagine when you're 80, you're more content. You know, you've fixed up some things, you've repaired some of your relationships, you're comfortable in your own skin. I want you to imagine that you're just having a cup of tea in front of the fire as an 80-year-old looking back on you right now. So you write it from that place.
hmm,
Or it might be imagine the greatest version of you. You write it from that place. Or it might be write a letter from love to you. Or if you're religious, write a letter from God to you.
Mm.
If you've got a beautiful connection with your grandfather who died, imagine it's your grandfather writing to you from above. So there's lots of beautiful ways to metaphor it, you know?
I'll share this with you. It's crazy to me that you said that because it had been a little while, but it was probably about 3 nights ago. I had a dream about my grandfather, and I
Um,
hadn't thought about him in a while. And the fact that it just came up in the dream, and then just now with you,
yeah.
that's kind of cool. Thanks for that.
Do you have fond memories of your granddad?
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He
The
was
other, please.
no, he was awesome.
Yeah, great, great. You see, the other thing to talk about men as well, which I mean the whole of society, but men in this context, that people just don't like to talk about, and it's a big component of self-acceptance. It's also a big component of getting into the body. Like you and I are talking about with me about, sentimental things like your granddad and I can feel between us there's some, subtle kind of tears behind our eyes,
Hmm.
you know. We need to realize as men that that's beautiful,
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
really, really is. And I think, Craig, I think it's, and this is again why I love doing the podcast and having these conversations. I think it shows people, probably more specifically men, all the different sides. Because I think that's the other issue I would say as we start to wrap up here is that I think we get so self conditioned that it's specific sides that we're supposed to show the world.
Mm,
And then worse, we perform to those specific sides. And I think the emotional side is the side that most men, especially, are trying to keep
yeah,
far locked away as possible.
yeah, yeah, 100%, because we've been conditioned to be secure, stable, structured, have direction, go for the goal. But the wife of that side is flow,
Mm,
present moment awareness, allowing spontaneity, the domain of the feminine, you could say, but really it's just flow. One needs controlling, the other one needs surrender.
mm-hmm,
And really, that the marriage does have to happen in ourselves before we can see a beautiful marriage of those two energies on the outside. I mean, there's, yeah, I mean, for centuries and centuries and centuries, the flow component of the human condition has just been repressed. Women have been repressed and burnt at the stake and raped and pillaged and for so, so, so long.
mm,
There are even gospels left out of the Bible that relates to the power of women.
mm. Yeah, I think like you were going there, and the one word you mentioned there that I talk a lot about now, and is surrender. I think people think surrender is weakness, but I
Yeah,
think by surrendering in a certain way, we actually are able to take on more and be more. Yeah, no, I think this has been a really really poignant discussion, Craig, and I really really appreciate it.
yeah.
Last thing I wanted to ask you was this. Um, Obviously you've had success in many areas in your life. Uh, what do you hope, Craig, that people remember most about the way you help them?
Um, what I hope is that people believe that I help them from a place of radical love. And what I mean by that is there's two sides of love, or for me, there's two sides of the expression of love in human relationship. One side is, I love you, come here, let's play, let's celebrate, I'll support you, I've got your back. And the other side is accountability. It's not good enough. I need more. You said you don't do this, you've not done that. Are you aware that this is happening? It's not good enough. So I would hope that my clients and the people that I support believe that I help them from a whole loving perspective, not just rubbing their egos.
Mm. Listen, I think you are a very intelligent, interesting man. And I think this to me was eye opening. I think I'm really, really glad that I came across you online, Craig. And I'm glad I trusted my gut. I thought when I saw what you were doing, I'm like, I think he would be an interesting person to have on the show. So thanks again for that.
Right.
Where can people find you?
They can find my website, craigwhitementoring.com. I've got a podcast channel. If you type into Google Craig White Dare to Be Different, I have my own podcast. Um, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find Craig White Mentoring on Instagram. Yeah. And
Awesome.
if you want to know more about, I guess, my message, get on the website, sign up, and we can add you to the newsletter.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to include a lot of that in the show notes, Craig. And again, I think people will get a lot out of this conversation. And I'm hoping that it leads them towards you to learn even more, Craig. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Charles. It's so great to meet you, mate. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I love your capacity to listen and your humble warmth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And thanks everyone for tuning in. That's greatly appreciated. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.
I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Craig's story is a reminder that performance isn't just about doing more, it's about becoming more. It's about stepping into clarity, letting go of what holds us back, and leading in a way that changes not just our own lives, but the lives around us. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What does success truly mean for you? And are you willing to move yourself first so that you can move the world around you? If today's conversation sparks something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the Bare Essentials podcast for more conversations that challenge and inspire. Thank you all for joining me. And remember, dare to roar.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.